I am gambling amongst cheaters. I am gambling amongst cheaters. Tejas vinam aham. I am the power of the powerful. Jaya asmi. I am victory. Vyavyasaya asmi. I am endeavor. Sattvam sattvatam aham. I am goodness amongst the good. I'm sattva amongst the sattva. I'm goodness amongst the good. I'm saintliness amongst the saintly, etc. Let me read the verse again. Dyutam chalayatam asmi. I am gambling amongst thieves. Tejas vinam aham. I am the power of the powerful. Jayasmi. I am victory. Jayasmi. Vyavyasayasmi. I'm also endeavor. And sattvam sattvatam aham. I am the goodness of the good. So let's go ahead and troubleshoot that. I've got somewhere I want us to go. Well, let's start off by troubleshooting that a little bit. Anybody have any thoughts about that verse? If you don't have any thoughts about that verse, either A, you're not paying attention, or B, you're intellectually deficient, which is my way of saying you're dumb. So don't raise your hand, and you're either communicating to me A, that you're not paying attention, or B, that you're stupid. At least Krishnadas is living up to his name. What do you got?
Sounds like Krishna is stating, or what you're stating is he didn't say it was Krishna saying.
It's Krishna. We go with that.
He's saying that he is whatever that group of people holds most dearly, or what is their virtue. So like he's gambling amongst cheaters.
Okay, he's gambling amongst cheaters. All right? So he's whatever you hold to be most dear. Do you follow? If we go with Krishnadas's statement, which is a way to troubleshoot the obvious offensive part of the verse, which is that Krishna says he's gambling amongst cheats. And if we go with Krishnadas's resolution, which seems to be an obvious way to get Krishna out of trouble for saying something as offensive as that he is the gambling of cheats. He could also be alcohol for alcoholics. He could also be pedophilia for pedophiles. He could also be rape for rapists. He could also be murder for serial killers by that argument. Did you follow that? So the problem we have is that Krishna's made a statement where he said he's gambling amongst chalayatam, amongst like thieves, cheaters, dishonest people. And if Krishna is now whatever you hold most sacred, whether or not that thing that you hold as dear is profane or not, then we could, by that resolution, we could then pick the most profane thing we can think of, and then Krishna could just as easily be saying he's that thing. If that doesn't work for you, then that resolution doesn't work for you. Did you follow this? For you not to have noticed this massive mole on the verse, this massive trouble spot in the verse, means you're either not paying attention or you're genuinely speaking an extremely shallow person who's incapable of deep thought about anything. You follow? So Krishna Das didn't say what the problem was. I've assisted him. You realized it had to be solved. But you didn't really explain the problem. I've now explained the problem. Please raise your hand if you understand the problem. Hari Bhakti, you don't understand the problem? Then why didn't you raise your hand? Let me say it again. I'm looking for your hands to know if I have to repeat myself. You want to be like the cool kid that doesn't raise their hand? It's not going to work out for you tonight. Raise your hand if you've understood the problem now. Okay. All right. You didn't raise your hand. You still don't understand the problem?
I'm still confused.
You're confused about the problem, or you're confused about the resolution?
I'm confused what exactly means to be gambling among the cheaters.
Okay, sure. So let's go with any answer to that question possible. We could say it's the excitement they get. We could say it's the actual act of gambling. We could say it's anything. So if Krishna either metaphorically or symbolically or literally is identifying himself with the gambling of cheats, do you follow? I don't think we have to flesh out what exactly is intended by that. Because take any interpretation of that you want. Right? Symbolic, literal, or anything in between. The act of gambling, the feeling you get, it doesn't matter. What you've got there is you've got some criminal act that Krishna is identified with in some way. You follow? Is that a problem? To identify God with a criminal act, either literally or symbolically, yes, it is a problem. Do you get the problem now?
Yeah, it seems sketchy.
Okay, we're in agreement. I think sketchy is the accurate academic term for what Krishna's done. So now that we've all understood the inherent sketchiness of any interpretation of what exactly Krishna means by being gambling amongst gamblers, amongst dishonest people, amongst thieves. Now what you're left with is you're left trying to figure out, okay, so what is Krishna like? What's he doing? Why would he say something like that? Why would he identify himself in any way with criminal activity? And then Krishna Das, without explaining what I just did, which is the problematizing of the verse, he automatically understood the verse was a problem. See how logical we are? If I asked you to explain exactly what you were doing, you might not know. You might not be able to explain it. But your brain works that fast that you recognize a problem and you try to resolve it. So his resolution, which I think is a pretty good one, is Krishna's identifying himself with whatever it is that people hold most dear. You follow? And then what did I do? Yeah?
Made it a problem.
It was already a problem. He resolved it. What'd I do? Yeah?
You made my resolution, you put it to where it could be a problem as well. So.
Yeah, I demonstrated that resolution might not work if we tested it. It might not have totally upset people. Now, if you had a parent who was addicted to gambling, gambled away everybody's life savings, and then, wound up committing suicide over his debts or her debts, then you might get super offended with that resolution. But because most of us have not seen the really ugly side of the addiction of gambling, it might have gone under our radar. And so an important thing to do when you're testing how good your resolution is is you got to subject it to some scrutiny. So I started taking other criminal acts. I picked the worst ones I could think of: murder, rape, and then I picked child molestation, because that usually is a massive taboo in almost any culture on the planet. And I threw those out to see if those would disturb everybody. And I attempted to reduce your resolution to absurdity by applying it to situations like, and using it to make up verses that you would not want to make up. You follow? Does that make sense? Okay. Anybody else want to resolve it? Yeah?
Well, I have to disagree with you.
You have to what?
I have to disagree with you.
You have to disagree with me, okay? You could also say you disagree with part of what I said.
Okay. I think that because of how Krishna said this phrase, it's not, I don't think it's bad that he's identifying with something negative. I think Krishna's trying to say that he's the highest, and he's using, I didn't hear it the way that Krishna else heard it. I heard it, I am gambling amongst sheep. That's like the craziest situation you could be in. You're not just gambling amongst normal people. You're gambling amongst chiefs. It's like the most intense.
So I think that's a different way of viewing the verse. Let me repeat it, just in case any of us missed it, including myself. I am the act of gambling amongst people who are cheaters. Therefore, I am whatever is dear to somebody. And then Krishna here is saying he's the highest in that amongst cheaters, where they're expert gamblers, Krishna's that gambling. So he's like the highest thing in any situation. So those are different points, right? So one of them is Krishna is the absolute zenith of anything, and the other one is that Krishna is what's most dear to you, essentially, right? Okay. Do you see the problem with your resolution?
The way you said it back wasn't how I meant it, but now I don't see the problem.
You don't see the problem. Okay, so tell me what I missed. But let's move fast. Go ahead.
I didn't mean that he's like the best gambler because he's amongst chiefs. I meant that when you're gambling amongst chiefs, it's how to say it, like.
I think she means that Krishna is in the nominative.
You don't speak for her. Go ahead.
It's the most intense cheating situation you could be in, but I think he's just saying that it's the most intense. It's the most of that kind of situation.
Right. So I tried to do a better job than you of explaining it by using the word highest. Now you've just spent a ton of time and you just said the most. How have you, I mean, as far as I can see, you've just done a worse version of what I did. Like I did a better job explaining what you said than what you just did. How did I not say everything you said without the stutterings and deficiencies?
I don't know.
Help me. I mean, I'm really trying to understand. Because the problem we have is that if Krishna identifies himself on any level with gambling, we have a problem. It's a criminal act amongst criminal people, and whether it's their dearmost thing or he's just the most criminal act amongst criminals, the most criminal, how does that improve our situation in terms of the deficiency I saw in this verse and the problem I saw? It doesn't whatsoever. Did you follow this? Like you actually made it worse. Like at least his resolution was Krishna is whatever you hold most dear. Yours is no, actually that act, that criminal act, at its highest zenith, the most criminal act, he's the murder of serial killers. He's the rape of rape murderers. He's infanticide amongst murder. He's the killing of a child. The most of a bad thing. Do you see how much worse she made it?
That's not what I meant. I just meant he's using it as a figure of speech.
I don't understand. You have to defend what you're saying. I've just said that whether you interpret it symbolically or whether you interpret it literally makes no difference because you've identified yourself with criminal action. Therefore, if you're okay with that, you could say it's just a figure of speech that he is the murder of a child amongst murderers. The worst, the most heinous rape crime amongst rapists. The rape of a child amongst rapists. The most, figuratively, he's saying. Does that make it any better? It does not. Your attempts to defend it have just made it worse. It's like by the time you're done defending Krishna, he'll be guilty of like every crime we could possibly come up with. At least with you, there was something there. Because you were saying that it was just whatever you held dearest. Krishna was that thing. In your version, you're saying he's actually that heinous crime, not just whatever you hold dearest. You actually made it infinitely worse. Are you following this? You may not, because you may be like in defense mode. But I'm not. I'm open. I'm just objectively looking at what you've done. You made it worse. If you were to say, for instance, Krishna is, for a child molester, he is the child's attracted to. Yeah, but you're twisted up in what you're sexually attracted to. But the attraction you feel, that's perverted. But the principle of being attracted is natural. Everybody is attracted by something. And so whatever you're attracted to, that's ultimately Krishna. Instead of pervertedly going and engaging in some sort of criminal act, if you turn towards God, you've created now a healthy way of understanding the principle behind your attraction. And we're getting to the root of basic human attraction and needs, and Krishna is that. And so you might think that, yeah, Krishna is the alcohol for the alcoholic. But if you get attracted to Krishna directly and you realize that it's actually Krishna and not the alcohol, you'll stop being an alcoholic or rapist or murderer or pedophile or deviant, and you'll start doing that, being healthy. And you'll start to find your happiness and your satisfaction in a healthy way in life. At least your resolution has that. And so if you were willing to double down and get ugly with me and go, yeah, I do mean that. That rapist has some attraction to rape. And ultimately, that attractive principle, that's the thing that is Krishna. And you're doing it in an unhealthy way. You follow? Do you understand? Somebody eats or has sex in an unhealthy way, but then they can do that same thing in a healthy way, and it's not degrading. And so the core principle of what is dearest is Krishna. It's edgy, but you might be able to do it. Your version does not have that opulence, as far as I can see. It takes the example in a terrible direction where it becomes unrescuable. He's literally the greatest act of anything. Or he's figuratively the greatest act of anything. And now it identifies it with the act instead of something inside you that you're attracted to. Your version leaves the specifics unimportant. Your version makes the specifics important. Because it's okay now to say Krishna is figuratively the worst act of rape, the worst act of murder, the worst act. He's rape amongst rapists. The worst act you can imagine. That's what we're figuratively identifying Krishna with. I can't see a resolution of that the way I can for what you said. edgy or not, it doesn't work. You want to comment on this?
Yeah. So I really like how you used Krishna as answer and found that attraction in it. Like I'm kind of tripping on how Krishna is this like meta attraction.
The word Krishna literally means the attractive one.
Right, but he is the attraction itself, but he's also the object of the highest attraction. So it's like this feedback loop if you...
Yeah, which would make sense for God, right? God would be the source of love, your ability to love, and then he would also be the supreme lovable object, right? And God's love is what creates the ability to love for you. And so with God as a sort of Jungian archetype of a lover, you now, being God's child, have the ability to love, and then God becomes the greatest repository of love as well. Correct? It's edgy, but it could survive. Do you see how the other version doesn't survive?
Yes. Because then it makes God non-God objects, which God isn't.
It doesn't leave that space where we can muddy up what he means when he says this. It begins to identify him with the worst thing, even figuratively, as opposed to a principle behind the thing. Are you following this? Vishnu? Okay, more comments on this? Yes, loud.
I'm thinking that along with the lines of what you're saying, that Krishna is the original source of desire. And so whatever he has is pure.
Yeah, so Krishna, there's a book that was published in the early days of the Hare Krishna movement. Krishna is the reservoir of pleasure.
So if we, as in our human form, that desire is perverted.
That's right. We externalize and we deify and we turn into like a fetish. You guys know what a fetish is? The term fetish, before it was used in sexual contexts, it's used in religious contexts. And the word fetish refers to like a totem. Like when people have like a rock or a mountain or a totem that they build, and then they invest that thing with magical powers, and they think it has magical powers. And so we fetishize the material world. We empower it and make it into this special thing that's somehow like incomprehensibly attractive to us. But that real thing is Krishna. But we externalize that, right? And so now Krishna's saying that thing, ultimately now that's me that you're attracted to in that wrong way.
Which is misusing our free will.
And there's a movie called, I think it's called American Me. I think it stars Edward James Olmos. It's a prison flick. Of course, our resident prisoner knows it. You know the one I'm talking about? It's called American Me, right? There's a movie from the 80s called American Me. I saw it before I joined the Hare Krishnas. It's a heavy flick about a guy who goes to prison when he's a child. You know the movie? It's about the guy who goes to prison when he's a child. Edward James Olmos. This is before he's like the oldest guy on the planet right now. But this is like when he was a young guy with like a super pockmarked face, but he wasn't like an old dude with a pockmarked face where he looks like he's like literally like 800 years old or something like that. So he goes to the movie as a child. He gets raped. Like it's like ugly, like violent prison stuff. It's a rough prison flick. It's gritty. I think he joins the Mexican mafia. He gets out, has to commit crimes to the Mexican mafia, like that. It's kind of your average prison flick with him on both sides of the iron bars. You remember the movie? Okay. Don't go watch it. It's not. It's not like. It's rough. It's a rough movie. I mean, I remember it 35 years after I watched it. It's a rough movie. So he gets out of prison, meets a nice girl. They start dating. He's super respectful of the girl. It finally comes time for them to seal the deal and have their magic sexual scene. And he goes and starts to rape her. But not like, kind of like goes to rape her. There's a modern version of this in Game of Thrones where Jason Momoa's character, what's his name? Khal Drogo goes to have sex with whatever the blonde girl's name is, and he goes to begin to rape her as well. And in both scenes, it's like, whoa, slow down. And you realize that Edward James Olmos has been incarcerated for his entire life, so the only sex he's ever had has been prison rape. Therefore, when he gets out and he tries to have a normal relationship with somebody, he doesn't know how to do it. And he has to kind of educate himself that not all sex is rape, not all sex is violent, not all sex is painful, and you can actually have some sort of mutually consensual sexual experience. It's a super heavy scene because of the implications of it, of what it would be like to be incarcerated for your entire life in juvenile detention facilities and then in adult penitentiaries, and what it would do to your understanding of intimacy and how it would corrupt and mess with kind of basic things that we all take for granted, namely sex and sex desire and ideas about the nature of romantic intimacy. You follow? Above and beyond the grittiness of the movie, just that idea is really intense. In that sense, this girl has to start with that. He's a good man. He's not a rapist, but he is. He's not gay, but he obviously, that must have been the only kind of sexual contact he had in prison. He's trying to have a relationship with a girl that he dated and courted and was really respectful. And she did the math and realized how messed up he was. And then there was some sort of therapy. You remember it, right? It's an accurate version of it, right? It's the kind of movie scene that you never forget. Not because there's nothing really it's not like naked and crazy stuff like that, but just the subject matter is so intense. You follow? Essentially, we all are like Edward James Olmos' character. We have a perverted relationship with pleasure that's based on exploitation of other people and material pleasures, although we're spiritual beings. We're like somebody who's fallen asleep and woken up in a virtual reality game and doesn't realize they have a whole nother life. And they just begin playing the virtual reality game. I don't know, there's a YouTube video, there's a guy, he hypnotizes somebody and then wakes them up in a video game. And they start freaking out. And he hypnotizes them while they're playing a video game. And then he wakes them up in the video game, which is like a zombie video game, and they've got a gun, they wake up on a gurney, and then the zombies start to come out. And they start to shoot at the zombies and freak out like they're in the game. You follow? We're like that. We're like Edward James Olmos' character. We've never had a healthy relationship with pleasure. And so we pervert it. And to rescue us from that, the person has to get into that dungeon with you and pull you out of it. And say, no, what you're thinking here, it's not there, it's over here. You're thinking that the orgasm is linked to rape. No, it can be consensual. There's a whole other way we can do that. You follow? There's a whole other way it can happen. And so the woman becomes kind of saintly in some ways because she loves the character enough to work with him through this. And so Krishna in this example also becomes kind of saintly because he digs into our spun, perverted world and tries to pull us out. Now instead of the verse being deficient, the verse becomes like really compassionate. Did you follow this? With a lot of the items in here, Krishna could be identifying with the best or the greatest of all things. With this one, I think a better resolution is to say it's the principle of attraction. Because otherwise you have to identify him with the worst of all rapes and the worst of all this and the worst of all that. Did you follow? because you're taking non-normative things. If he's the highest of all mountains and the greatest of all aquatics, you follow? That's not so difficult because you're talking about things which are normative and standard. But when you take something which is by its very definition profane, addiction, addictive, vice, degrading, and you identify Krishna with that, you got to really be careful how you choose to resolve it, because you don't want to create a problem that's bigger for yourself. And what you have to do is you have to say, does my resolution let me subject it to some scrutiny and see if it fails or succeeds? And you have to be ready for the smart person you're talking to come back at you and then say, oh, so is Krishna the best of all rapes? You have to anticipate that, and your resolution has to work with that. Did you guys follow this? Yeah.
So are we saying that Krishna is a gambler or is a pedophile?
No. I mean, I just spent 25 to 30 minutes, way longer than I wanted to, and pretty much every sentence out of my mouth was to get you to not think what you just said.
I understand that.
Let me say it again. I just spent 30 minutes, I'm looking at the clock now, it's more than 30 minutes, arguing with every ounce of intelligence I have, from every angle of vision I possibly could, precisely to get you to the place where you wouldn't say that. So for you to then say to me, is Krishna that? I'm feeling disheartened. Because the entire purpose of what I said was to not do that. And I saw Madhuri go down that road to a place I couldn't pull back from, and so I really critiqued her resolution because I didn't think it was rescuable. So I'm worried now. What do you got for me? But why would you have said what you said is my question.
Because I guess I wanted a clear clarification as if I was going to argue with someone, then I would say no.
If you were going to argue with somebody, you would say, yeah, it's kind of edgy, right? Krishna's gambling amongst chiefs. What you really have to understand is that we're all attracted to something. The principle of being attracted is universal. And there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is we get attracted to the wrong things. And rather than saying you just have to shut that down and just kind of turn it off, we're saying that principle of being attracted isn't bad. You've put it in the wrong direction. We got to figure out a way for you to turn it back to its source. And so Krishna's reaching out to you to tell you, hey, I'm never that far away. And instead of looking outside yourself towards that profane thing for your happiness, you can look towards me and you'll find your cup is full and you won't be degraded. You'll actually be exalted by that. That's me saying it in 40 seconds. I also said it in 30 minutes. Does that answer your question? Okay. You got to help me out. You can't just say what you said. You got to say, I'm thinking about how I might argue, and what the person said, so you're saying this, how would you respond? As opposed to, are you saying this? Because it makes me think, I've done a terrible job of explaining myself for half an hour straight. You follow me? All right. That wasn't what I wanted to discuss. Here's Prabhupada's translation of the verse. I am also the gambling of cheats and the splendid I am the splendor. I said power. I am power of the powerful, but tejas could also mean splendor. I am the splendid of the splendor. I am victory. I am adventure. And I am the strength of the strong. Of course, he also says, Bala Balavatamaham. So he also says, I'm the strength of the strong. Here's Sattva Tamaham. So I went with, I'm the goodness of the good. I am adventure. I am the strength of the strong. Can you guys notice anything different in Krishna's, or in Prabhupada's translation? He says, I am adventure. Vyavyasaya asmi. I am Vyavyasaya. Vyavyasayas. I am Vyavyasayas. Vyavyasayas means determination, effort, resolution, hard work and labor. It's two Sanskrit suffixes and one verbal root. V, ava, and so. So primarily means to kill or hurt. But when it occurs with other suffixes, it doesn't mean that. Ava means down or off or away. And then V kind of intensifies the word. Anyway, you can't always trace out exactly what something means through the etymology. But vyavyasai means resolution, determination, effort, labor, etc. And Prabhupada renders it as, I am adventure, which I love. I love that translation. Just to give you an idea of how the word vyavyasaya is used in the Gita, Krishna says, vyavyasaya maka buddhi ekeha. You need to have resolute, single-focused determination. Single-focused and resolute intelligence. And for those who are avyavasai, who are irresolute, then their buddhi is bahushaka hiyananta. It's many-branched and endless, meaning that you're always looking in different directions and you can never focus on one thing. And furthermore, Krishna uses the same word again. He says, bhogashvaya prasaktanam taya pahrita chetasam. For those whose intelligence is stolen away, for those who are too attracted to enjoyment and opulence, for those people, samadha navidhyate vyavyasayatmaka buddhi, they will not be able to achieve or they will not be given resolute, focused consciousness when it comes to meditation. So the term is used primarily in the Gita to mean resolution or determination. And I think that would be a fine translation here as well. I am resolution, I'm determination, I'm effort, I'm endeavor. That'd be another translation. But Prabhupada chooses I am adventure. And that's what I want to focus on. The thing is, I don't want to give you guys a verse that hasn't been troubleshot. So if I'm going to give you something to think about, I want the verse to have been troubleshot. And this took half an hour to troubleshoot because it's not easy reading. It's a dicey concept. It's an edgy concept. It's not unworkable. It's not undefendable, but it's not, good, the good, the true, and the beautiful. It's not easy. It's not an easy sell. You got to dig a little deep for it. You guys are familiar with the monomyth? Joseph Campbell's monomyth? Joseph Campbell was a narratologist. He came up with this idea called the monomyth from his study of different cultures of the world and their stories and their narratives. There's a hero. The hero gets a call to his journey. Then he gets some supernatural aid. Then he crosses the point of no return, what's called the threshold. That's where he can walk away and go back to his ordinary life, or he can, go down the rabbit hole or take the red pill or whatever it is, depending on the story. Then, once he crosses that threshold, he's now into kind of a supernatural journey. He has guides and mentors. He has help. He goes through trial and tribulation. He acquires skills. He descends into the abyss where he's practically speaking killed. And he does battle with dragons, or he slays the demon, or he is killed and is resurrected again. He comes out the backside, a transformed individual, comes back to his community and nourishes community and receives blessings. In essence. There's 17 little micro nuances in Joseph Campbell's version. Some people have even more, some people have less. But that's it in essence. You get a call to action, you get some supernatural aid, you cross a threshold, you have gurus and mentors, you get tested, you go into the abyss, you're resurrected, you come out the other side transformed, and then you're able to re-enter into your community with blessings, and you're able to bring back what you've learned, and you're transformed, you're no longer the same person. And so he then goes through all the major myths of the world, the Iliad and the Odyssey, and Native American myths, and Hindu myths, and even Christian, the story of Jesus and what have you, and Moses, and everybody else he can shake a stick at, and he tries to show how they all follow this monomyth. Do you guys follow this? And he was really into Carl Jung and Jungian archetypes, and so like everybody's playing out the same basic psychodrama with the same basic characters in your life. These archetypes, fundamental figures. And he, there's also people who were before him. Otto Rank is a very famous neo-Freudian psychoanalytic philosopher who was actually Freud's right-hand man for 20 years, but who, in my opinion, was way more brilliant. His books became popularized through a guy named Ernest Becker, and it was called Ernest Becker's Denial of Death was Ernest Becker's big book. That life is essentially an immortality project. We're all going to die, and the anal phase in a child's development is when you realize that you are linked to this world, that even though you might be like soaring among the stars in your mind in your fantasy game, that you have to defecate, your teeth rot, you get cavities, you start to realize that you are limited. That's Otto Rank's interpretation of the anal phase in a child's development, where they start to realize that they're truly linked to this world and they can't just run unlimitedly. And so denial of death is the idea that all people are really trying to find a way not to die and have it all be for nothing. And when you put your name on stuff, and when you make a hospital or dig a well or start a family, which is an organic way to try to live forever, by passing on your genes, or you become a teacher, or you do some groundbreaking thing, or whatever you might do, it's really your attempt to get over death. It's really your attempt to transcend death. So, and Otto Rank also came up with a monomyth theory. But this idea that there's kind of a fundamental thing we're doing in this world. We're trying to slay a dragon. We're trying to go on the hero's journey. We're trying to become a better version of ourselves. We're trying to become metamorphized into something beyond what we are. That's what we're doing here. So when I read I Am Adventure, I troubleshoot it the same way that I troubleshooted the I'm Gambling Amongst Cheats. That we're all after something otherworldly, something big, something amazing. How do you say to return or to come in Spanish? Regresar or venir.
Venir is yet to come.
Yeah.
It is not to come back.
No, regresar. So that's why I said to return, and I said to come, because adventure comes from avenire, which is where you get the Spanish word venir from. It means to come back. And so even the adventure carries with it this idea of a return in its original etymology, of a cycle, of going out to come back. You follow? At least in its original etymology. So when I hear Krishna say, I am adventure, and you guys will figure out why I spent so much time troubleshooting the gambling amongst cheats. We all want to do something amazing in this world. We want to have amazing experiences. We want to be happy. We want to have amazing relationships. We want to accomplish things. We want to figure stuff out. We want to succeed. We want to boldly go where no man has gone before. We want to stretch the limits. I love going deep in the Himalayas. I like really going deep into the mountains. I walking through snow or slush, or going to a high mountain peak, or seeing a 360 view of the Himalayas. I like having those adventures in my pocket. It's things I've done. I remember them. They give me joy. They make me feel like I'm living a full life. I like to grapple. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I like to fight. These things make me feel like alive. I jumped out of a plane. I thought that was a lot of fun. I ran with gangs as a kid. That was also thrilling. I committed crimes and took drugs. They were thrilling experiences for me. I traveled around the world. I like to go to exotic ports of call. Good and bad. I've had my pious and my impious versions. If I look at my life, I've tried to have adventures. I like doing thrilling things. And I don't think I'm unique. I think all of us have this propensity. We might have different ways we express it. It might be through reading or writing or something like that. You write fiction and you escape from the world. It's an escape hatch for you. Like this whole alternate dimension you're in when you're writing, Even you with your Chinese TikTok, whatever the heck you call it, because TikTok is Chinese, so whatever your version of Chinese YouTube is, you try to do these fun, cool videos. And artistic expression in general is an attempt to go beyond the normal and do something amazing and different and adventurous. People who are sex and love addicts, they're looking for adventure, and that's their poison. That's how they get it. Foodies, they go to cool places and eat, nasty stuff prepared by karmis, and they eat, they eat kind of delicacies from different places, and that culinary, adventurous culinary experience. There's a girl on TikTok just lost 1 million followers in one day because she was a brat at her table. What's her name? That 16-year-old girl. She's best friends with James Charles. How do you guys not know this? She's 16. She has 100 million followers on TikTok, 40 million followers on Instagram. Charlie what? What is it? Charlie D'Angelo? But you kept butchering the name. I couldn't hear what you said. You're like, Charlie D'Angelo over there? Come on, dude. I'm quoting you. You can't fudge me on that. Yeah, Charlie something else. Right? Her and her sister, right? They got bratty at the dinner table when they brought that big bougie chef, and she lost 1 million followers in one day. Cancel Charlie. Hashtag cancel Charlie. So, everybody's looking for adventure, isn't it? Hey, isn't it? Even in a joint, right? You try to find something cool to do, right? Some way to escape, right? Yeah, exactly. Right? And Krishna's saying, hey, I'm that adventure. So here's what I want to say. So all that troubleshooting I did with the way we fetishize the material world and imbue it with power it doesn't naturally have, and turn away from the real source of pleasure and look to the false source, we turn away from real adventure. Krishna consciousness is real adventure. And here's my point. And I don't think this point is exclusive to my religion. I think this point could be used by any good tradition. You realize you're going to die. You realize this material world is temporary. You realize that you have a natural desire for perfection, for truth, for joy, for happiness, which really the body won't be able to give you. Because you have a desire to permanently have those things, to permanently have relationships, to create permanence in a place which is fundamentally impermanent. And that is going to create automatic frustration and failure. You do that math, and you realize, wait a second, I want something that this world can't give me. C.S. Lewis said one time, he said, the fact that you want something that nothing in this world can satisfy, the fact that you have desires that go beyond this world, is the proof that you are meant for something beyond this world. And then you find religion, in whatever shape or size. You find the ultimate hero's journey, the ultimate adventure, the adventure of the self, the adventure of self-discovery, the adventure of self-realization. We have a book called Journey of Self-Discovery. That's the ultimate journey. That's the ultimate adventure. When I was a kid, I played Atari. This was like back in the day. There was a game on Atari called Adventure. None of you played it. You could probably Google it. There's probably a version online right now you guys can play. Cool game. You were going through the desert, flying carpets, riddle the Sphinx type stuff. The game was called Adventure. I loved that game growing up as a kid. Actually, Adventure, you know what? No, that was a different game. That was called the Riddle of the Sphinx. Adventure was a game with dragons and castles. There was a gold castle, a white castle, and a red castle, and a black castle. And there was different colored dragons for each one. And you had to kill all the dragons and put all the sacred artifacts that you got in one place, and then you won the game. That was called Adventure. I love that game too. Played that game like there was no tomorrow. I think it's natural for children to want adventures. I think as adults, we really just take that very simple, visceral, innate desire for adventure, and we find adult ways of expressing it, which usually are sensual, and they become really myopic and limited. And we lose the magic of a child, like a child in the anal phase, when they realize they can't soar amongst the clouds. I used to look up the clouds and think like, I'd like to soar amongst the clouds. I'd like to walk on the sun. I'd like to travel to other planets. I'd like to live forever. I had these childish desires. I don't think they're childish. I think that's our nature. And I think as we grow up, we become stupefied, and we materialize, and we fetishize, and we pervert that original desire. And beneath all of our adult pursuits for orgasm, fame, and money, and whatever it might be, if you strip it down, we're really searching for that hero's journey. We're really searching for transcendence. We're just looking for it in all the wrong places. And Krishna consciousness, or any legitimate spiritual tradition, is a way to recapture your childhood, to become a child again, to purify that innate desire that's basic to human existence, and to not materialize it and degrade it and adulterate it and pervert it, but to restore it to its original glory, not in a naive way like a child, but in a pure way. And spirituality becomes life's greatest adventure. Chanting japa becomes an amazing, adventurous experience. Doing kirtan becomes an amazing, adventurous experience. Studying scripture becomes an amazing, adventurous experience. Praying becomes adventurous. because you commune with and you touch something which goes beyond all the limitations of this world. And so we're Edward James Olmos. We're that sad child who gives up their dream, gives up their idealism, and settles for second best. We're that rapist who has a total misunderstanding of what real intimacy looks like. We adulterate what was perfectly good, this idea of adventure, because we can't find anything in this world which can actually reciprocate with it and fulfill it. And Krishna consciousness is a rebirth, a second birth, where you restore this sense of magic to your life in a way that doesn't depend on naivete, in a way which allows you to have your eyes open and you're able to see everything, see through the world into what's really going on, and spend this short amount of time we have here doing something truly amazing, slaying the ultimate dragon, doing the most amazing thing. And really being a devotee means that you adopt this as your life's work. You decide, this is what I'm going to do with this lifetime. I'm going to embrace Krishna. I'm going to see Krishna. I'm going to speak with Krishna. That's my adventure. You become attracted to that as like, wow, that sounds amazing. And then you go ahead and start walking. Therefore, I love Prabhupada's translation. It works. It's a stretch from the word vyavasaya. But it's not impossible. Endeavor, effort, hard work, those are potential meanings of vyavasaya. And so it's the greatest of all efforts, the greatest of all journeys, the greatest of all endeavors. I am adventure. Thoughts? Yeah.
I really appreciate this class. It's one of my favorite classes I've ever really get. I just started out with the verse that the resolution was way more edgy than I'm used to. And I heard it when you explained the verse.
And that's saying something, because I have a penchant for the edgy. So when it's even, I'm even like, geez, it's getting really edgy right now.
So when I heard it explaining some of the endeavor and the beginning, I noticed that that's different from those other explanations in the verse. So to hear you flesh it out and hear it applied to a full circle theology, it was just really nice to hear, and I appreciate it.
I feel like I'm on an adventure. I feel like I'm like in this, choose your own adventure book. I feel like that. I feel the same magic of my childhood without the naivete. I don't feel like giving up the naivete of youth. It requires you to give up these ridiculous dreams to walk on the sun and touch the divine. Krishna consciousness for me is this amazing adventure. And I think that's true for all serious spiritualists. And really, I think that's what you guys are thinking about if you want to do that as your life's work. More. Yeah.
So I really liked what you were saying about adventure and how important it is and how Krishna consciousness is this adventure. However, I still don't feel like the gambling thing's totally resolved for me.
Come on, dude. I'm down to 2 minutes.
Yeah.
I spent half an hour on it. By simply saying it, you're totally disturbing my mind.
I'm sorry.
I gave you guys a colossal amount of time to troubleshoot the verse. You obviously have access to me online. Why beat me up? She already did that, and I made it clear I didn't appreciate it. Do you not get the hint?
No.
Obviously not.
No.
Okay. You get the hint now?
Yeah.
Do I need to throw something at you? What do you got?
No, I was just going to say it's pretty cool the way I never thought I'd hear anybody tie in American me and make a nice signal to it.
I never thought I would either, man.
That's cool, and it made me think, like, we view rapists and pedophiles as perverts, but like a true saint probably thinks the same of us, it's just a different level.
Well, generally speaking, we think of pedophiles as being the boogeyman. The modern day equivalent is a boogeyman. A devil, a demon, someone with a black heart, someone who's irredeemable. The problem is we have a theology that all souls are pure. That means we have to believe that everybody has good within them. Christianity has it easy because they believe that all souls are fundamentally corrupt. So therefore, they don't have to find good in everybody. They have a bigger problem, which is that why would God make all souls fundamentally corrupt? Because an all-powerful God wouldn't have to do that. And so it starts to make God not all good that he would do that. They have a bigger problem. But at least on the surface, we can account for people being real demons and it's the devil and stuff like that. We don't have that. Therefore, we have to say that the real culprit is ignorance. And that there is, Oscar Wilde said this, there's no saint without a past and there's no sinner without a future. We have to believe that all people have good in them. We might need to castrate them, or we might need to tie them up or put them in jail forever, but we don't get to condemn them fundamentally. And that means we have to figure out that there's really just, they perverted something. You know? It's not an easy worldview. It's much more convenient to do the us versus them thing. There's Goyim and there's Jews. There's Christians and there's heathens. There's Muslims and there's infidels. It's us versus them. Right versus wrong. God versus the devil. Good versus evil. You just take whatever doesn't fit in your little world and it becomes evil or bad. But when you have a worldview that everything comes from the divine, then you got to find a way to see even within bad things, some good. Some principle which has been perverted, but that principle in its essence isn't bad. Do you follow this? That's, we have there's a price tag attached to a pure soul theology. Namely, you have to find good in everybody. That doesn't mean you can't still build cages or even have a death penalty. That doesn't mean you can't still punish people who do things wrong, but you can't really just hate them and cast them out. That becomes cheap. Do you guys follow that? Okay. All right. Okay, let's do some kirtan. Thank you.